In the year 2017, the world's largest corporate merger leads to the creation of Eurocorp. The company is the first to spearhead the development of a biodigital implant, the DART chip. Fueled by adrenaline, its users experience unsurpassed connectivity with the dataverse, rendering all digital devices obsolete.
Hi there, my name is Dalfridge, and this is my review for Syndicate. While I had heard of the original Syndicate games and they did sound interesting, I never actually played them. This meant that unlike a lot of people, I wasn't too bothered about the switch to FPS as I didn't already have any attachment to the series. Set in LA in the year 2069, 57% of the population have a biodigital implant called the DART chip. The chip replaces all need for digital technology and connects the user to their chosen corporation. These corporations in turn replace nations as the powers of the world, and industrial espionage peaks with each corporation having an army of agents to protect their interests. As the player, you take on the role of Kilo, an agent of the largest corporation which spearheaded the development of the DART chip named Eurocorp. It is soon revealed that there is a spy leaking company secrets, and you are tasked with uncovering and catching this spy. While I won't spoil the story, I feel you will have safely guessed where this plot is heading already.
Just because I don't want blood running in the streets, you think...
Identifying Cayman Global Covert Extraction Team.
Warrior Cayman don't matter. She's ours.
There have been quite a lot of similarities drawn between this incarnation of Syndicate and the Deus Ex series. Superficially, you can see this, as both revolve around mega-corporations with superhuman, digitally enhanced agents. However, aside from that, they don't have much in common. They are both FPS games, but whereas Deus Ex has RPG elements and the choice between action, stealth and tech, Syndicate is almost all about the action. There are some shallow RPG elements in Syndicate. For example, you can upgrade your damage resistance, health regeneration and the abilities you have, but there are only 1 or 2 ranks to each one. There are about 17 upgrades to choose from, and by the end you choose 10 of them, so not a whole lot of choices need to be made. One thing I wasn't keen on about the upgrade system is that you just get to choose one upgrade at set points in the story, usually after a boss fight or a similar big event. This just made everything feel a little rigid, and personally I feel it would have worked better with an XP system. What makes Syndicate stand out slightly different to your standard FPS are the breach abilities. As an agent, you have a better DART chip than ordinary people, and you can use this to hack into other people's chips. This is presented in the single player as 3 separate skills. Suicide causes the target to kill themselves, Backfire makes their weapon malfunction, dealing damage and reducing their armour, and Persuade makes them fight on your side for a limited time. You also have the Overlay skill, which highlights enemies and slows time down. All the abilities are very useful and make the game a little bit more interesting than just standard run and gun. For example, if an enemy is coming at you behind a shield, you can flank him and shoot him in the back as usual, or you could turn his comrade to your side and have him kill him for you. On the other hand, if just playing this as a straight shooter is more your thing, you're perfectly able to ignore these skills, with the exception of some of the boss battles. However, if you do this, it does become a fairly generic FPS title, and you probably won't enjoy it as much. If played as a standard FPS, there is little here that you haven't seen before. The guns are your standard machine gun, shotgun, pistol and sniper rifle, with a couple of heavy weapons thrown in like a minigun and a flamethrower. One thing that is slightly different is, instead of a standard melee attack, you have an execute move. If you run up to an enemy and click the right stick, you perform one of many execute moves for an instant kill. These moves are a little finicky as you need to be looking at the enemy in the right spot, or you just stare at them and spin around trying to find the right point to click on.
Subject is secure. Data. Whoa, that's odd. Wait, let me just... Unusual activity. I'm gonna have to keep an eye on that. Okay, this part is classified.
But protocol states...
What? You're lecturing me on protocol for my project. Out!
Even though this is clearly a modern FPS game set in the future, there are several things about it that feel very old-fashioned in terms of video games, and I don't mean that in a bad way. There are several points where the way forward involves jumping onto a pipe or across some shelves, which a lot of modern video games don't do anymore. Thankfully these platforming sections aren't frequent, and they're simple enough when you get to them. There's no feeling of blind jumping and not knowing whether you'll land on the platform like in a lot of first-person platforming. Another element that is noticeably missing is a moral choice system. You're able to kill civilians in this game in the same ways as the enemies, even down to the instant executions. However, the game doesn't require you to do this, and it offers no punishment or reward for killing them or letting them live. The choice is entirely up to you and how you wish Kilo to behave regarding innocent bystanders, with no heavy-handed good boy for not killing or bad boy you killed them from the designers. This is something I've read was in the previous games as well, so it's nice to see at least some of the ideas from the previous incarnations have survived. That being said, this is still a modern FPS, and what modern game would be complete without making you mash a button to essentially continue a cutscene? I don't usually mind the mash X to open door style parts of games too much, however in Syndicate I found to be really overused, and it seemed like my superhuman agent was incapable of opening a grate without straining. This just came over as a little daft, and I'm unsure of their purpose beyond making sure I'm paying attention.
The market is at a critical juncture, and war is brewing between the corporations. Cayman Global's been thumping their chest with this Panama Canal thing, and developments in chip technology are at the front line of the war. There's an obvious risk that Drawl is going to defect. No, we can't allow that to happen, but at the same time, she's too valuable an asset to terminate. Sam.
Jack.
Still waiting for the numbers you promised. Something you're not telling me?
Sorry, I should have something by the end of the day.
Good man.
As for the controls, they're really intuitive as they're fairly standard for a shooting game. While they're also very tight, they do feel heavy for most of the game, and it can feel like a struggle to move occasionally. This heaviness has quite clearly been done by design in order to make it feel more real, and for the most part it's absolutely fine, however it does feel cumbersome at times. The visuals are rather striking and incredibly stylised, but there is a slight issue with the light bloom. It's a little bit overdone, which generally isn't a problem, however there are some rooms, especially later on, where it's overkill and all you can see is flare effects. There's also a strange sort of light blur at the edge of the screen for most of the game, which can be a little bit distracting and weird. The audio is a bit of a mixed bag. On the whole, the sound design is excellent, the guns sound meaty and real, you can distinguish the small sounds like incoming footsteps and girls chatting easily and so on. Despite this generally good audio, the voice acting is just shocking in places. This is doubly surprising when you look through the cast list and you see the likes of Rosario Dawson and Michael Wincott. He was the bad guy in The Crow. In total, the campaign was fairly short, clocking in at around the 5-hour mark. I don't think I particularly rushed through the game, and there wasn't a lot more exploring I could have done. There are 3 types of collectibles that you could scour the levels for, but that's about it, as this is an incredibly linear game. The single player is really average in a lot of ways, however the last hour or so really picks up after the story goes in a slightly different direction. This is a shame really, as it left me wishing the whole game had been as good as that last part.
Come on! If you try to kill me, I'll blow the chip. You'll never stop us!
Executive biochip detected on soft asset Gary Chang. Extract for analysis. Extraction complete. Upgrading.
That being said, there's also the multiplayer aspect to look over, and that's a different story entirely. For a start, there are no competitive modes of multiplayer, only cooperative, which is unusual for an FPS game in itself. The co-op is fairly reminiscent of games like Left 4 Dead, in that you play as a 4-person team in a smallish map with a single objective which you have to work together to achieve. While most of the objectives boil down to the get from point A to point B killing all the dudes in the way, you have to work together, which makes this a very enjoyable experience. I'm not hugely sure of the longevity of this though, as once you've completed each map there's little reason to replay. The levelling system in the multiplayer is also deeper and better implemented than the single player. For starters, you can choose more abilities, and these fit into either support or attack style skills. You can also choose between more types of upgrades, and there's more of a skill tree structure than just randomly choosing like in the single player, and there's also an XP system, rather than just picking skills at certain fixed points. It almost feels as if they had 2 separate games and decided to glue them together at a later date. The mixed reaction Syndicate has gained doesn't look good for it receiving a sequel, however I do hope Starbreeze make one, as there are a lot of good ideas here that could be fleshed out further.